Don't lose your way. Your mind, we have to be as one.
What's going on YouTube? Warstorm here, coming at you guys with another Intro to video today. So this is a video series I used to do in the past where I would talk about kind of new archetypes, and well, this isn't like a quote-unquote new archetype, but you've been hearing a lot about Spyrals. You kind of want to know, okay, what do they do? What kind of boards am I going to be staring down turn one? How can I prevent those boards from happening in the first place? And that's the goal of these videos at the end of the day, is to show you what a deck does. And while Spyrals aren't a new deck, they're certainly Double Helix is an incredible card, and it really raises the ceiling of what they can do. And so I kind of wanted to give you guys kind of a synopsis of what Spyrals are and kind of like show them how to counter. Now, the important thing to remember is that there are some cards that we don't currently have in the TCG that if I was playing with the full OCG lists, I would definitely be playing, which is Link Kuriboh here. I believe it's going to be a jump promo. I think it's winning the vote, and it's more than likely going to be a very expensive card, which is unfortunate, but it's definitely a card has a home in Spyrals because you have all these level 1 monsters, and it's also kind of important because you can use it to climb into Ningirsu. Not having Link Kuriboh basically means I can't really run Ningirsu in this list because the main way you go into it is using a Link Kuriboh and a Link 2, but you can't really do that without Link Kuriboh unless you're playing Gofu and Link Spiders, which Gofu is not a bad card, but I wanted to make the main deck as consistent as possible, and top decking a card like Gofu is no bueno. Don't get me wrong, I'm the first person to say Gofu is a 3-of, you should play it in a lot of different decks, but I feel like that without playing the deck as a mono build is the most consistent, which I'll kind of get to that in a moment. Trigate Wizard is in the Cyber Structure deck, if I'm not mistaken, and looking at the OCG build, it's a very important card in their boards because they're going to have it linked to ideally you want to have Trigate Wizard linked to 3 different monsters, so you can get this bottom effect right here, which is that once per turn when a card effect is activated, you can negate the card, and if you do, banish it. So that's the key part in the boards, is typically it's going to have a Trigate Wizard that has its ability linked that it would have when it's linked to 3 different monsters. That's really good, but obviously we're not getting it until November-ish or December, whenever the structure deck releases. And and a couple other cards that are still OCG exclusive. We have number 41 here. It's possible it could be an OCG import in Circuit Break. It wouldn't shock me because the set doesn't have a ton of like chase cards, and its TCG artwork has been revealed kind of in the stream. Instead of having the drinks in the stream, it has body pillows instead. So it's due for an import. We're just not sure when because it is an OCG exclusive. So if I were to guess, it would be in Circuit Break, maybe in Extreme Force. But what makes this card so good is the fact that you can, at the end of a combo, when you have all your Link summons set up, and you can make this with a field full of Link monsters, and this thing has to turn the monsters to defense mode in order to keep its skill drain effect active. But the thing is, you have a field full of Link monsters, so their effects won't be negated because they can't be in defense mode. One of the boards I've seen in one video is where he ended with a field full of Link monsters and this, and there's not a whole lot of ways to play around it. Basically like a walking lose 1 turn for any monster that can be put in defense mode. And it's definitely a card that belongs in a Spiral Extra deck because it's good turn 1. Then we have Recite Starling here. Now this is kind of it's another good generic rank 1, but it wasn't in Maximum Crisis when we got the initial wave of Lyrilusk monsters. However, the main reason I'm playing this, it does have an effect when it's Exceed Summon to bump up a monster by 300 for every material. It's kind of cute because you can bump up a Firewall from 25 to 31, which is a significant enough buff for Firewall Dragon, but the main reason you're playing it is it searches DD Crow, and if you've looked at some of the OCG lists, that's why they're playing DD Crow, because they have Starling. You can during your normal combo string, you can make Starling search DD Crow, and having a searchable hand trap is always really nice. But obviously, again, we don't know when we're getting this card. It could be in Circuit Break, and it's going to be an OCG import in a core set, more than likely, but we don't know when it's coming. As far as some of the other builds you're likely to see the Dragon Ravine set rotation Destrudo build that uses Ancient Fairy Dragon. It's a really potent strategy, very popular in OCG builds, and that's the Destrudo variant. This is kind of like a mono version, which I think I'm thinking along the lines of Zodiacs, where, don't get me wrong, like, all the different versions were good, but at the end of the day, pure Zodiacs was probably the best variant, and that's the same theory with the Spiral list. I'm playing the mono build because I feel like it's going to do what it's designed to do most consistently. Another important thing to note really quick about set rotation is Spyrals can easily out being locked under set rotation. Yes, they need their field spell, but Last Resort over here has an effect to send another card you control to the graveyard to get rid of any card you control. That includes the dead field spell your opponent might have given you off of set rotation. It's very important to remember that the deck can inherently out being given a dead field spell like Gateway of Chaos, etc. As far as but we're gonna get to some of the things you can side later in the video, but now we're gonna get to the deck list. So the first card we have here is Master Plan. Now, I only play one, but this card is what literally, being able to special summon this card from the deck is what makes the deck so good now, because she has a not hard once per turn effect to add a Spiral mission card when she's on the field. So that means you can add your rescue right here, or your assaults, and you're mainly not, what you're doing with these cards, you're not really using them for their on-field effects, you're using them for their grave effects, where they can be banished. Assault here, special summons from hand, and rescue summons from grave, and for a lot of the combos, you will be using Master Plan multiple times in a turn, and you will be banishing those multiple rescues from the grave by ditching them with your quick fix over here. Really, really just potent strategy for the deck, and Master Plan is pretty much the reason why the deck even functions, because she does have another effect as well. Now, this one is a hard once per turn, thankfully, but whenever she's sent from the field to the grave, that includes, if she's Kaiju'd, she adds a copy of the field spell and a copy of any Spiral monster from your deck to your hand. So, if you're summoning us off your double helix over here, you're getting 3 searches with 1 card. That's pretty good. And I definitely think it's one of the reasons the deck's even remotely playable is the fact that you can get this card off. I do have the 1 copy of Spiral Tough here. If we did have the Laralusk Exceed, I'd be playing DD Crow in this space instead. The main thing is Tough, while it's not the best card, it is Super Agent while it's on the field, and it is a key thing as a level 4. So you can use it during your turn 1 play strings to make, whatever rank 4, in this case Dweller, which I'll get to in a moment while that's in here. Basically, whatever rank 4 would be applicable in a turn 1 scenario, you can make it in this deck. Then 3 Super Agents. Even though we do have double helix over here, Super Agent's still the heart and soul of the deck. The whole deck revolves around having him out. You need 3. It's an Earthite monster that can special summon itself, so it works really well with Mrs. Radiant, and it's just a really, really key card, and I definitely would run 3. I've seen, and we have Last Resort over here, so this is one of these Spiral Gear cards that Quick Fix can search. And I've seen a lot of builds running 1 and 1 sleeper, and you can definitely do that, but the whole theory with running the second one is it does come up that you can summon the second sleeper to solidify your board from Kaiju-like cards, etc. And that's the whole thing with Resort, because it is a level 4 monster, but the main thing is it can equip itself from the hand or field to a target. While it's equipped to that monster, it cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects, also your opponent cannot target it with card effects. So what you'll do is you'll equip your sleeper over here with Last Resort, then when you'd activate Sleeper's effect to pop 2 cards, you will target Sleeper, but because Resort's equipped to it, it won't be destroyed. And the other thing to note is the last effect of Last Resort, which people don't tend to read, is that you can send one other card you control to the graveyard. The equipped monster can attack directly. So you can use this to out dead field spells, like I said earlier. You've been given off a set rotation. So that's important to note that the deck can out being under set rotation with the greatest of ease. So it's important to understand that. Then we have 3 Quick Fix, probably the other second card that makes the deck live. Whenever it's normal special summon, add a Spiral Gear card. Not a hard once per turn. Machine dupe target. Really, really good. And an Earth attribute at level 1 as well. Great stat lines too. And then once you can continually, if it's in the graveyard and you control a Super Agent, you can discard a card, special summon it from the field, but it gets banished when it leaves the field. Typically what you'll do to play around that is just keep making rank 1s during your combo play strings, and you can keep summoning the Super Agents back, the Quick Fixes back, and keep making rank 1s. It's typically the kind of way you play it. That's at least one of the ways you can play it out. Then we have the 3 Gear Drones. The main reason I have 3 is because it's also a machine duplication target, but it's one of the most important cards, because whenever it's normal special summon, it looks at the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck, then you get to place them back in any order you want. It also has an effect to tribute itself, to pump up a Spiral monster, and it also has a great effect to banish itself and a Spiral card to add Super Agent back. Really important card because you need it to guarantee you'll get your super agent effects off. So the another thing to note about Drone is it's one of the few ways in this game to legally stack your opponent's deck. You can give them dead draws, and once you know what, it gives you knowledge for future plays. So if you're citing something like, say, Mind Crush, for example, you can Mind Crush. You can, when they draw a card, you know they have in their hand, you can Mind Crush it away. Really, really strong little card, and it's important because it allows you to beat over almost anything with this card. Then we have the two sleepers. I know this is a similar theory with dinos. I know a lot of dino builds only played one Tyranno, but I'm playing two because the second one can come up, and you can summon the second one with double resort, with last resort equipped to both. And it is a really, really good card because during either player's turn, it can pop one spiral card you control and up to two cards your opponent controls and pop them both. So it's really disruptive in the middle of a play string. If your opponent tries to play into your board, you can just be like, okay, I'm just going to pop your two cards. Typically, it's one of the most things you always want to end your board on. Then for the hand traps, we have the one Max C and the two Ash Blossoms. These are actually what I own. I only have two Ash Blossoms. And since Max C is not banned, I'm going to play this little ratio. You could obviously play the third Ash if you have it. Maybe cut the tough for it. But I have two Ash, so that's why the ratios are this way. But Ash is a very important card against Spirals because you're going to be using it on machine duplication in most cases. Then for the spells, 1/1-for-1, it gets quick fix from the deck, ditches monsters you want in the grave, back to the grave, pretty much self-explanatory. The two assaults, it does have an on-field effect to let you draw cards. Most of the time, you're not going to be using it. You're going to be using it, like I said earlier, for its grave effect, where you can banish it, special summon a spiral monster from your hand. They actually have two big reds. A lot of earlier lists I've seen ran 3, but in playtesting, 3 was way too much. 2 is kind of the bueno number, in my opinion, because you don't want to, if you see too many of these in an opening hand, it can make your hand completely unplayable. And I feel like 2 is kind of the number. The second one kind of comes up on occasions. You could even play 1 if you really wanted to. They have the 2 Spiral Gear fully armed. So this is how you're going to get over big monsters. So equips to a super agent. That monster gains 1,000 attack. And if that monster destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can banish the monster and another card your opponent controls. It does not target. It happens in the same chain link. So let's say you run over a monster and they have a set card they haven't activated yet. Well, if you resolve fully armed, you can banish the set card. It all resolves in the same chain. So there's not a lot they can do. You could definitely get away with 1, but I do think regardless of the build, you should be running fully armed because it's one of the few ways the deck can deal with floaters. Then 3 resorts. It's the heart, and if Master Plan is the one of the heart of the deck, I feel like Spiral Resort is the backbone. Spiral Resort has a first effect that prevents spirals from being targeted by card effects. Then has a once per turn, not a hard once per turn effect. You can add 1 spiral monster from your deck to your hand. Really important card. You want to see it in your opening plays. But the other cool thing, it has a maintenance cost, if you want to call it that. Just shuffle 1 monster from your graveyard back into the deck or destroy it. You can shuffle extra deck monsters back with this. You can shuffle back hand traps. You can shuffle back anything you really want. It's one of the best cards in the deck because it also gives you another layer of targeting protection. So basically, like, in order to get out your last resort and get rid of that, they're going to have to get rid of resort first, then get rid of your last resort. So it kind of gives you more, it makes your boards a little bit more sticky and hard to play around. Then 3 machine duplications. Pretty much a staple, self-explanatory. You need 3 machine duplications and spirals, because quick fix and getting opening dupe quick fix is typically going to give your opponent a bad time. We have the 3 terraformings. It wasn't hit. I'm going to max out on it because you need to see resort in your opening hand. Worst comes to worst, if you do happen to have too many terraformings in hand, you can always ditch them with quick fix, but it is a staple in the deck, no debating, and resort isn't hard once per turn, so you play 3 terraformings. The 1 Foolish Burial for sending quick fix or any kind of piece you want in the graveyard to set up your plays. Then actually 3 copies of Foolish Burial goods. So the reason I saw a mono list playing this card, and I actually figured it is a 3-of, because while, yeah, you don't want to see it at multiples, it basically allows you to dump these to the graveyard, which allows you to get those last little pieces you need, because you want these spells and traps in the graveyard. So Foolish Burial Goods puts them there, and allows you to, if you have a handful of spiral monsters and no way to get them out, and you need to get them out of your hand, you can send this, use Foolish, send this, special it from hand, and it'll trigger off, obviously, your Super Agent's effect. There's just a lot of little niche combos with this card, and I definitely think in the mono build, it should be a 2 to 3 of at least. Then the one utility wire, this is another spiral gear. You can search off your quick fix. Typically, this is going to be something you end your board with. You're going to end your board with a Super Agent, either a double helix or a, one of these guys here, and your utility wire will be live, so it's just one more searchable disruption for your turn 1 boards. Then we have the 3 rescues. You do sometimes use the third one. Yes, it can occasionally lead to you hard drawing a lot of them, but that's one of the reasons why this card count is where it is. Mainly, it's for its grave effect. It has an on-field effect to add spiral monsters from your graveyard and add them back, but the main thing is you're playing it for the grave effect, to be able to banish it, to target a spiral monster you control, and special summon it. Really important card, important to your combo play strings, and at least to 2, if not 3 of. Then for these extra deck, we have the one Princess Bride, a pretty important card because she allows you to controllably mill. You can activate the top card of your deck, provided it's not a hand trap. You can, if it's not a hand trap, you can, if it's a spell, you can add it to hand. If it's a monster, it gets milled. In most cases, unless you hit Maxi or Ash Blossom, milling is not a bad thing in this deck because all of these things right here can be special summoned from the grave. Sleeper can't, but you shouldn't have you won't be hitting Sleeper too much, hopefully. The main thing is it's controlled milling, and it's an 1800 rank 1, which is pretty solid. We have the 2 Dualhans. Honestly, this was mostly because I had the rune, but you definitely can get away with 1. So it basically has a quick effect to have 1 face-up monster on the field, and it'll be sitting at 1200 when it hits the board. Makes your board a little more hard to play around. If your opponent can't just summon something and beat over your monsters, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for them. And if you do happen to summon the second one, it has an effect when it's sent to the grave to shuffle the other one back. So it's kind of a neat little mini loop that deck can have. Then 1 Dweller. I mentioned this card earlier. This card counters Spyrals harder than almost any card not named Droll and Lockbird. So the basic premise by having Dweller is I'm assuming there'll be mirror matches, and Spyrals cannot function without their grave effects. There's no debating on that. If you resolve a Dweller on them on the standby phase turn 2, they're not going to be able to get a lot of their plays off. It's just that simple. Like, the best they can. They can search the field spell, but they're not going to get any master plan effects, grave effects. They can't get a grave effect off. They can't get any of their spiral missions off. They can't summon quick fixes from the grave. There's a lot of things they can't do under Abyss Dweller. So it's definitely a card, if you're not already packing it in your extra deck and you can make it, you definitely should pack it in your extra deck for sure. Then 1 Castell, this definitely could be a Tornado Dragon. It was honestly just the last card in the extra deck. You could also play a Tornado Dragon as well. Then for Link Monsters, I have the Mrs. Radiant here. Mrs. Radiant's mainly here because we don't have these guys yet, and Quick Fix and Super Agent are both Earth attributes, so it's the easiest Link monster to make. You can make it if you have something like Quick Fix, Dupe, and a Super Agent in hand, you can make Double Helix underneath a Mrs. Radiant, which gives you kind of more extra deck monsters to play around with. Because you'll have 2 open zones just with basically like a 3-card combo, which is pretty nice. Then the card that's going to change the game, which is Spiral Double Helix. So this requires 2 spiral monsters. So first thing is its name is Super Agent while it's on the field or in the graveyard. Not only is it easy to summon, but if you use it using 2 quick fixes, you can loop those same quick fixes right back and make a rank 1 with them. The other effect is that you can declare 1 card type, monster, spell, trap, and if you call it right, you get to special summon a monster from your deck for free. Most of the time, I will admit, sometimes when I don't have Quick Fix, I will special summon Quick Fix to get its effect off, and it does come up sometimes. Most of the time, you're going to be grabbing Master Plan from your deck. And that is a really powerful effect. And its markers are really good as well because you can get the effect off no matter what zone it's in. And you can actually make a double helix on top of a double helix. The main reason you play 2 is because if your helix is striked, you're going to have a bad time because it wasn't properly summoned, so you can't big red it back, etc. But you need 2. 2's kind of like the bueno number in my opinion. Then we have 1 Gaia Saber. This is mostly here because it's a generic Link monster. It's one of the better ones we have. We don't have Trigate Wizard yet. And there's a lot of situations where it does come up. Usually you'll be making it underneath a Link monster, and that's kind of why it's here. The 1 Proxy Dragon, it's a pretty decent generic Link too, and you can make it underneath your Missus or next to a double helix to keep your plays going. Then these are cards that are actually in the same set as Double Helix, which is Circuit Break. We have one Akashic Magician. So this is a little interesting little card. I've done a video on the card, which there'll be a little icon in the video. You can check out the video on Akashic Magician. But the main thing with this card, it has good link markers. It's easy to summon, and it can bounce around it can play around your opponent's field if they put a card in the wrong slot. The main thing is you can mill 4 cards controllably with this thing, because if it has a fire, let's say you can declare 1 card name and then excavate cards from top of your deck equal to the total number of link monsters co-linked with this card. That means you have an arrow pointing up towards her, like with Firewall Dragon, and then you have her on top of Firewall Dragon. That means you're going to mill 4 cards controllably. And in a deck like this, where like, you know, you can call a hand trap and mill these or these, that is really, really strong. I like having it in the extra deck. Usually after getting its effect off, though, it's very important to link it away, because it has that little upper marker right there, and you typically do not want to give your opponent a spot to summon monsters. Then 1 Varrow Dragon. This is the cover card for Circuit Break. It's scarily easily to summon in this deck, but it has 3 pretty powerful effects. First off, neither player can target it with monster effects, so your opponent isn't gonna, in the mirror, they can't use Sleeper to pop this. They can't use they can't bounce it with Firewall. It's very important. In the mirror, this thing can be used to break boards, and it does require 3+ effect monsters, which is a lot of resources to go into, but you can use it to break boards, which we'll get to that. So the second effect is that it has a quick effect to target 1 face-up monster in the field, and it loses 500 attack. Your opponent can't respond to this. This doesn't seem like it matters, but the way you can activate this is you can activate it when on attack declaration, and it can force your opponent is not going to be able to trigger what I call battle traps. They won't be able to chain to the effect's response on activation, and that is really strong because you can use it to play around back row. And the third effect, which I think is the most powerful, is if it started damage check, if this card attacks an opponent's monster, you can take control of that monster and place it in a zone this card points to, but it's sent to the graveyard during the end phase of the next turn. Oh boy, so you can use this effect to steal link monsters, and then it's really good in the mirror, I think. You can use it to break boards. That's the main thing you're going to be using it for, and that is really powerful. Definitely a card I highly recommend you having in the extra deck, simply because you can make it. But you know, it's really up to you, but I do think the card is really, really strong in Spyrals. Then we have 3 Firewall Dragons. It's an amazingly good card. It's got a quick effect to return cards to your hand and on an opponent's field, and it can continually extend plays by special summoning monsters from hand. The third one will come up, but you could probably get away with 2. If I were going to trim the extra deck down and put these cards in, one of the Firewalls would probably come out, because I don't think you need 3, but you can make 3, so it's a good thing. So the whole goal of this video is to kind of teach you about Spyrals and kind of teach you, we're kind of coming to the end, where what can I use to counter Spyrals? Because that's the whole point of the deck. Well, besides turning off their grave, which is very, very effective with Abyss Dweller, there are cards like Different Dimension Ground and Necro Valley. Necro Valley is not the best because they can activate set rotation and immediately turn it off. They can summon Super Agent, but if they can't bring anything out of the graveyard, that's going to give them a bad time. You have to have Necro Valley for some kind of protection. If you have that, you're in a pretty good shape. Different Dimension Ground is very, very effective against Spirals, because you flip this on them and all their stuff gets banished, so they can't do their quick fix loops. They can't pull off a lot of things like that. Going second, Droll and Lockbird is by far the most effective card against them, because the deck needs multiple searches for basic deck function, and probably one of the most effective sides. Anyway, guys, about comes to the end of the video today. Let me you guys think of Spirals. What would you recommend for siding against them? And do you think the deck is going to be good or not so good? So anyway, guys, as always, I thank you guys for watching. It's Aura Storm signing out.